Hello folks, welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa. This is Chris in central Pennsylvania with an update on the Cabbage Patch Chronicles. That's right folks, in South Africa, the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police are hunting Cabbage Patch dolls. No, not really. That's not what it's about. This is the story of a man who is growing cabbages on property that belongs to the city and the brouhaha that's come up from this. Now, there's probably room to move on both sides of the story, but let's get the facts out there. So first off, what he'd say is that this is what Joe Nkuna, or Joe Nkuna, as he goes by, had to say. The might of the law has been unleashed upon me and my cabbage patch. I'm charged with intentionally interfering in a manner to the property of municipality by planting cabbage outside at the corner. I'm issued the maximum fine of 1,500 Rand to be paid within 30 days and a permanent criminal record for planting cabbage and onions. And he says that no bylaw was cited. Now, he's been fined for growing cabbages on city land. This story has been blowing up, but he's pushing back now. He's pushing back. He claims he was handed 1,500 Rand fine and a court order over the cabbage charges. But the Metropolitan Police Department says the fine was over violations of national regulations and local bylaws and disputes his claim that he was handed a court appearance document. Now, Joe Nkuna grows vegetables outside of his Theresapark home. He had originally planted flowers, but then decided to grow vegetables because his wife, as a social worker, wanted to take those things to help the less fortunate. And she takes them so people can feed themselves. Now, the garden was so successful after he switched from growing grass to growing vegetables that he started using a park, about a 60 square meter patch of land near his home. And he says he had permission from the park manager to start the garden, but apparently the city disputes that. Now, this is what the city had to say. The action that we are taking or took today was issued with a traffic fine as he's obstructing the sidewalk. Now, I haven't seen any footage of where the sidewalk is, so we'll have to trust the authorities. But this is according to Road Traffic Act 96 of 1996, where no one's allowed to obstruct a sidewalk. Really? Have you seen homeless people on sidewalks in South Africa? I have. Seen plenty of things obstructing the sidewalk and no citations. The city, under the Urban Management Department, who are responsible for maintaining parks, are attending to the issue, as he planted vegetables in the city park, and therefore they're unable to clean or cut grass due to the vegetables that are planted in the park. Well, there you go. That's the view from the city. We've heard in Joe's view, despite saying that he fabricated the story, that he'd been charged by the Metropolitan Police officers. The spokesperson for the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police conceded that if he didn't pay the fine, he could approach the courts for relief, and the fine indicated the date in courtroom in which this could be done. So perhaps Joe misread the summons or the paper that he was given, because it wasn't really exactly what he said. But people are showing their support for the Cabbage Bandit as he vows to challenge the unfruitful fine in court. Yep, he's going to challenge the Metropolitan Police action. And of course, as the city has said, the citation lists the court and says how he can challenge it. Well, what I have to say about this is the following, folks. South Africa has 60 murders per day on average. Women are raped, gang raped, and murdered at a frightening number in South Africa. Homicides, as I mentioned, are off the chart. Cash in transit heist, in which usually they execute the drivers or kill them in an explosion. Rural insecurity and violence, farm murders and assaults, tortures on South Africans are off the charts. Carjackings, theft. Where are the Metropolitan Police? Where are the SAPs? Not to be found. The criminal justice system doesn't work. It barely charges criminals or suspected criminals. It barely takes them to court, and it barely puts any behind bars. A broken system. Yet the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police have time to show up and harass a man who's doing something for the good of the community. If South Africa didn't have all these daily woes, this would be a reasonable thing. He's violating city ordinances and national laws. You can't be growing vegetables on city property because they have to maintain it. Fair enough. But don't you have more pressing things to do in South Africa than harass this man who's growing food to help hungry people? It reminds me of last year when the pandemic started and the lockdown started, and many white South Africans took food out of their own pockets that they purchased to feed hungry black South Africans, their neighbors. And they were threatened with arrest and detention and their actions being criminalized by the venal African National Congress, whose own members stole that food and distributed it to their own families and sold it to others in many cases, particularly in Gauteng. A story that has long since been forgotten, but not by me. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Do they not have more? And let's talk a little bit more about the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police Department. You know, these are the same people that violated an order from Ronnie Lamola, the Minister of Justice, directing that no informal settlements would be demolished and no people would be kicked out of where they're staying at during the pandemic. You can't have a pandemic when things are so dangerous and then they come and demolish homes and people walk around the streets. Yet that is exactly what the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police did, supporting and backing up the Red Ants as they destroyed informal settlements on the southwest side of Johannesburg. Last year, in the dead of winter, destroying homes. Many of them structures were actually brick structures, have been up for 6, 7, 8 years. And suddenly, the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police Department goes out on what was owned by the city, state-owned land. So the credibility of the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police Department is already suspect. We see that the police in Johannesburg oftentimes act against the interest of South Africans, particularly black South Africans. The Red Ants incident I just referred to is a good example of that. And now this incident here. While the gentleman clearly appears to be wrong, this is unnecessary. What they could have done is gone and told the gentleman, you can't plant there anymore. Once these vegetables have been harvested, you can't not use that land because of the following reasons. But no, they issue him a 1,500 Rand fine, $100. Well, folks, if your Cabbage Patch kids are hanging around, watch out. The Joburg Metro Police are coming for them. If you're not a subscriber to Chris Wyatt Africa, why don't you find more interesting stories and objective analysis from an outsider, a non-South African, talking about events and places and people in South Africa. The Cabbage Patch Chronicles continue in South Africa. Become a subscriber. Smash the button right down there. Cheers, folks. Be safe out there.